actually love what you just said about the positive approach to this, because I think there's so much negativity about, I think with good reason, there's a lot of hard things about being a vet, but it's very nice to look at the other side of that and what are the positive things and what are the things you can do to get to those positive places. I think that's very good to focus on that, actually.
In this episode, we speak to Victoria Johnson, a specialist veterinary radiologist and the founder and director of VetCt, a global leader in teleradiology and telemedicine. We dig deep into diagnostic imaging as a career choice, the hows, the whys, and the why nots, and everything else you want to know about it. Victoria tells us her secrets to maintaining a healthy relationship when your significant other is not only a vet, but also your business partner. A situation that is not at all rare in our profession. And of course, I can never resist asking a fellow parent, and especially a parent who is such an accomplished business owner, how they balance parenting with caring for what Victoria calls the other child, your business.
We also got some pro tips from someone who's been immersed in remote working with teams over Zoom for years. This is before even COVID started and before the rest of us had to join on to this video conferencing bandwagon. And she shared with us how to successfully communicate remotely with her team or with team members without losing the human touch. But before we even started the interview, we fell into an unplanned conversation about the responsibility that we have ourselves as vets for our own well-being and how sometimes we sabotage our own happiness. So let's get straight to it with Victoria Johnson.
I think the reason I personally feel strongly about it is I was quite negative for the first 5 to 10 years of my career. So as I changed and as I started enjoying it more, I look back at it and went, a lot of that negativity was just my own fault to some degree. Yeah, there were, as you say, there are challenges, but there's challenges in every career. And I made myself miserable, and I could have had a much happier 10 years in my first 10 years if I had the right sort of support and mentoring. So that's what I'm trying to provide to other young vets.
Good on you. It's excellent. No, I think part of the problem is as well, you will have such a fantastic time in vet school. I loved vet school. It's like the best time of my whole life. And then suddenly it's like a hell of a shock to come out and be, because I definitely had a pretty rough couple of first years. And I agree. I look back, and if I'd had more support and the right attitude, possibly, and not coming down from such a high of 5 years of partying and excellent fun.
I was involved in a initiative, and the goal, it was quite an honourable goal, an honourable mission, which was to try to increase awareness of the difficulties that veterinary professionals face on a day-to-day basis, dealing with difficult decisions, life and death decisions, euthanizing patients, financial conversations, difficult clients, those kind of things. And I was like, actually, that's a really cool thing that I think owners should be aware of. But then I realised after, it was like almost futile. It's a futile mission, right? And it's also a desperate one. It's like, please help us, when we should be going, look, we can't change the way that they are, but we should be able to look into ways to change how we are.
And how we react to them. And
how do we set ourselves up with habits and skills and systems which make sure that we are, motivated, energized, or be able to bounce back from those difficult conversations, to be able to go into the next public consult, those kind of things. And having wind down rituals, whatever they are, so you get home and you connect with your family. It's never easy, but I don't think the solution would be investing time and asking for pity.
Yes, quite right. I completely agree with you. Yeah, absolutely right. And you won't change owners. You really won't. If anything, it's become, I don't know, with the generational changes, it's going to be harder and harder to change owners. They are different to the owners of 10, 15, 20 years
ago. This is the other aspect of it, of the performance stuff, as I see it, is you can't just go talk to owners and tell them to be different, but you can change them through what you do. So some of the stuff that we complain about is a little bit self-induced. So when people complain about bills and that, or they're funny about money and they hide on us, there is a little bit of self-examination that should go on to say, well, how did I set that up? Am I actually a little bit accountable for that? I'm not saying there aren't assholes in the world. There's lots of those, and you have to just live with them. But probably a lot of it is you can change them a little bit by how you do it, and that's.
I agree. And it's interesting that there's funny things about the way our profession's set up in some ways. We had a thing last year where we did like a roundtable discussion about some of the telemedicine services we're doing. But as a result of that, we got sort of quite a few big hitters in the UK came along. And one of them was the RCBS president at the time. And he said something really interesting to me. He was like, it is interesting how we deal with financial conversations with owners. If you go to the dentist in England, you go to the dentist and you see the dentist as the clinician who does the dental treatment. And then you go out and you get the bill and you discuss that with the practice manager and the receptionist. You never talk money with the dentist. And here again, you never talk money with the doctor. But as vets, we often do talk money with the clients, the pet owners. That's obvious. And in some ways, it changes the relationship a bit. And I thought that was quite an interesting point. I'd never really thought about it like that. Is if one's a doctor and one's a kind of business account side of things. And if maybe we should, profession, try and separate those conversations more.
I'm all for that. The vet probably has to demonstrate the value of what we're about to do. So there's an important aspect of that. But I do think it would be. I try and do that in my emergency clinic. But that's mainly because I'm really terrible at talking about money. I get all awkward about it. So my strategy is I demonstrate the value, and then I'll just say, I'll send an estimate out to the front. My receptionist will talk you through it, and if there's any questions, then I'll pop out and we can discuss other plans. But I'm terrible at, Gerardo, they're very good at teaching this to their veterinarians, is that you say the plan, you say the estimate, and then you have to shut up instead of immediately going, oh, what we can do is just do less and, make it cheaper. I very much lean towards that. Or we can just do so. So now I print out the estimate, go look at it. If there's a problem, we'll talk about it.
No, I think quite right, Gerardo. That's the way to do it. And I think one of my friends who's an equine vet, who's probably a bit better at this, equine surgeon, he always says, do a good job and charge properly. And I think having that confidence to say that is very important, actually, and knowing that we value what we do. But I think a lot of vets are naturally nervous about doing that, particularly new grads. I think it's a hard thing. But Gerardo, your skin sounds good. It sounds really cool.
Oh, good. Well, my partner is one of the best invoicers in the business. So I kind of got to pick up the skills a little bit. But I have a personal coach, and he is a public speaker, and he listened to a couple dozen of our consults, and what he did is he goes, you know what, I've watched you guys time and time again. I see the body language that you guys present to guys into our veterinary team. This is how it looks like. And he replayed this kind of thing out, and we're just oh, you look like that. And he goes, that's what you look like. You don't even look at them when you talk about it. You pat the dog. So what do you want me to do? There's going to be around about $1,500 patting the dog. And he goes, you gotta look him in the eye. It's going to be $1,500.
Yeah, know my value. It's true. Yeah. It's very true.
And then when you think that no one knows, right? But he goes, there is no confidence in anything that you guys saying right at the end there, when you should have absolute certainty.
Did they take it on board? Have they changed?
And then we just created an open discussion around it. So how'd you go? Oh, it was so hard. I was shaking and I didn't want to say anything. I counted 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I said, do you have any questions? Right? Instead of or we could do this is counting. It was a real deliberate kind of say it, look in their eyes and count to 3.
Really? And I imagine once they've done it a couple of times, they're like, okay, this is all right. This is good.
And the standard. The standard in which you need to deliver the consult, deliver the estimate, and then you just can't go back from that. You're like, that's how I have to do it. I didn't do it well on that one. Gosh, I got to do better next one. So it was really good. It was quite an opening experience.
So did it make a difference to the average invoice or to the turnover? When you started that training, could you see it in the books?
I don't know. We definitely saw it in the average services per client for some of our lower income earners, lower billers. Because you could hear it in their estimates, right? And then the language was changing to for what we like to do. It's probably best for Fluffy to do this. It's kind of what we need to do is this, and it's but it made it easier for them. It's just this is what I need to say, this is what I need to do, follow the formula. So it made it easier for them. And then also at the same time, so but it had to be what I realized, it had to be a consistent reminder every couple of months we're going to go through this every couple of months. So we're actually going to go through another round of consultation excellence. That's what we call it, and reiterate that. And because we get new vets all the time, so.
Good on you. That's such a good approach. More practices should be doing that. They really should, I think.
It's not easy. It is not easy, but it just put the power back into your court, because you say it because you believe it. So say it because you believe it. And if they say no, it's not, then you have no doubt in your head that it was about the way you delivered about it. It was the doubt, then like it goes, it's because they just didn't like the plan, or they couldn't afford it. That's it. It's not like, oh, I didn't deliver it powerfully, so I don't know. We're talking awesome stuff.
I'm recording, don't worry.
We should probably start. I'm Gerardo Poli.
I'm Hubert Hemstra, and this is the Vet Vault. Victoria, thank you so much for making the time to join us on the Vet Vault. I really look forward to chatting to you.
Cool. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I want to start this episode quite practically. When I read about you and was researching you and deciding what we want to talk about, there's so many aspects of you. There's business owner and entrepreneur and parent, but radiologist primarily. That's sort of the starting point where a lot of this was built from. So I want to talk about radiology. It's not a topic we've discussed before, radiology as a specialty and as a career choice. And I'll start with a very simple one. What was your decision making like in deciding, yes, I'm going to become a specialist radiologist?
Cool. Yeah, no, good question. So I had a few years in practice when I first graduated. I was at Bristol Vet School in the UK. And I found those first few years in practice, I really enjoyed them, but I also found them quite tough. And I was a mixed practice vet, as they used to have 20 years ago. Fewer and fewer of those in the UK, I think. But essentially, I did some cattle work, I did some sheep work, I did some horses and small animals, and just a bit of everything. And I felt really like a jack of all trades, master of none. And I started to get a bit, I guess, fed up with that, and felt I needed to try and improve my skills. I did some emergency vet work for a while, which obviously is where you guys' background come from. And as part of that, I got increasingly frustrated that I couldn't make a diagnosis because I wasn't very good at radiographs, x-rays, and I wasn't great at ultrasound. And I started to think, if I could just nail that, if I could just do a good ultrasound and interpret radiographs really well, I think I could be a much better vet. So I started to look around and look for residencies and training programs to do that. And when I actually got a residency in radiology, my plan all along was to do that for 3 years and then go back to being an emergency vet and a general practitioner, but just have a lot more skills in radiology. And actually, somehow along the way, I got sucked into the world of diagnostic imaging and never went back. So that's pretty much how it happened. I would say one other thing, I was very much inspired by a lecturer in radiology when I was at the University of Bristol, who to me, it just seemed like she could do magic with an ultrasound transducer. And she was called Frances Barr, and she's a very unassuming, lovely, gentle person. But I remember these very impressive surgeons being completely baffled by a case one day. And she would just simply lay on an ultrasound transducer and tell them exactly what was going on without any invasiveness. And I just remember thinking that was magical, really. So that's kind of where the attraction came from.
I actually, before I started the emergency clinic, I tried to get into an imaging residency because I love the magic wand. I love an ultrasound machine. It's become like my right hand in practice. So I wanted to follow the same journey. I seriously considered, and I actually applied for a residency, but couldn't get it. It's a very competitive field. What does it look like if we have a listener who's young and is on the same sort of trajectory? What's the process these days? I don't know if it's the same in Australia and in the US and that, but how do you go from GP practicing veterinarian to specialist radiologist?
That's an excellent question. I think something I should also say and come clean on. When I wanted to do this, which is such a long time ago, it's 20 years ago I started my residency. It wasn't a very well-known specialty. And actually, there was only me and one other candidate that applied for the position that I went for to be a resident. And I think really I probably wouldn't have got one as easily these days. I was very lucky at the time. Essentially, the process these days would be that you have to apply to a residency program at somewhere that has an approved residency. There's 3 types of residencies you can do. You can do the fellowship, Australian route, obviously. And there's some places in Australia as well, I believe, that offer the American College Residency, ACVR, and also the European College of Veterinary Diagnostic Imaging. It's usually a 3-year program. Some people offer a 4-year program. It's pretty full on. It's hard work. There's a lot to learn and a lot to concentrate on, but there's also a kind of joy to focusing on just one topic. In some ways, I always think this, it's actually easier to be a specialist vet than it is to be a really good GP vet. I have so much respect for my friends who are GP vets, more than I do for myself as a specialist, because you're trying to own a smaller topic. It's much easier to know everything about radiology than it is to know everything about being a GP vet. So even though it's hard and there's a lot to concentrate on, a lot to learn, it's a small area, it's a smaller field, so that makes it easier. But the residencies are quite competitive. I would say generally I'm a great believer in people going into residencies having already got some practical veterinary skills under their belts. I think it's better to do a residency when you've already done a veterinary profession for a few years, a normal vet job. It just gives you an understanding of what a GP vet's life is, what types of cases you see. And I think as a radiologist, it's our job to be helpful to GP vets as much as we can. And it's easier to do that if you understand the job of a GP vet and what they're facing. And it's also more, you can be more relevant. I know somebody, a friend of mine who hadn't done much general practice, once looking at a mass on a cat's head on a CT scan and saying it was fluid filled and it had a thick capsule on the outside. And what on earth could this thing be? Well, any GP would know that's an abscess. Of course it's an abscess. You've really got to do the GP side in order to get your differentials in order and to understand what's common, basically. So,
I love that. That's the same as I had colleagues who went straight into emergency and then emergency internship and then worked in emergency. And then I joined her. She got my job at Animal Emergency Service. And then because I came from GP, and she would just go, "Jared, I can't see that one." It's just like, it's an itchy ear. Just I know nothing about ears. It's just like, okay, go. No, I'm not going to do this. You go in there, bring the dog out the back. We'll do it together, okay? But you go in there. And it was like a yeast infection. Is what I do with it now. It's a yeast infection. Come on, get it.
And I do. There's a little bit now of people identifying that they want to be a specialist at an earlier age, and that's something for me. It never even crossed my mind, to be honest, until I'd done a bit of general practice. I kind of didn't really even think about it as a career path. But now I think we get emails at my company from people saying, "Hey, I'm a vet student in my first year and I want to be a radiologist." And sometimes they say, "I want to be a teleradiologist," which massively worries me. And I usually go back to them and say, "Look, finish your vet degree, go into some general practice, and get familiar with GP work, and then maybe consider an internship and then a residency at that stage." I think that's a kind of good way of going about this. But it's lovely that people really want to do this specialty. But I think we are better as radiologists if we've got that background. I think it makes us better at our jobs.
I can understand what you're saying. It's like we aim for mastery, right? Mastery gives us a feeling of, like that we've achieved something. And like exactly what you said before, jack of all trades, master of none. When you get to mastery, like mastery is an elusive thing, right? It's never going to ever happen. But still the sense that you've got some sense of mastery in one area as opposed to like spreading it all everywhere, Yeah,
and it's a confidence. It's a confidence that spreads to other aspects of your life, knowing that I'm pretty good at this one thing. It is a nice feeling to have.
I think it's really important to know that I agree with what you just said. It's impossible to master all of it. It really isn't. But the smaller you make the topic, the easier it is to feel like you've got a sense of being better at it, I guess. I'm a great believer in having I guess what they call a growth mindset, that you're always learning and you're always open and you're always trying to develop and get better at what you do. I think that's really important. But it's certainly, I found it much harder to be a GP vet than I do to be a specialist. And I have tremendous respect for people who do a good job in emergency or in general practice. It's hard. There's a lot to know.
I just want to get back to how the journey to getting there. How do you get into the residency? Because that's the first stumbling block. Are there things that a young vet can do, or courses or hoops they have to jump through to get them first in line to get those competitive residencies?
Yeah, it's very, very competitive these days. It's become a really popular specialty. I think for a lot of different reasons. I think most people who offer residency programs, I think one important thing to think is you're going into a program and you're going to be there for 3 years. One of the things that the supervisor of that program needs to know is that you're a nice person, to be honest, and that actually there's a lot to say for that, and people don't talk about it enough, but you're going to need to fit in there for 3 years, and they want you to be passionate about what you do, to be somebody that they can work with for those 3 years, to be somebody who's keen to learn and to absorb as much information as you can during those 3 years. I think it's things you can do to try and increase your chances. People who've done things to show they have an interest in imaging before, so maybe they've done a publication in imaging, or they've done a project, or they've gone on some courses to improve their ultrasound skills and stuff like that. That's all really relevant, but I think actually the person needs to feel that you're going to be a good fit for that environment. You're going to make the most of those 3 years, be somebody that really gets on board with the team spirit and gets involved. That's actually equally important, I would say, to picking up 10 publications in imaging beforehand. At least that's one of the things I would choose on. Passion and motivation is very important, I think.
I am also curious. So it sounds like you like being a radiologist. Are there, like, if you had to advise a youngster, is it a good career choice? In that, let's flip it around. There's many positive things, but are there things that you don't like, or are there misconceptions that us GP vets have about what it's like to be a radiologist that maybe we should be corrected on?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing to talk about. I would say that there's pros and cons, essentially. So in the human field, radiologists are known for being the kind of no personality doctors who just sit behind the screen and they never deal with patients, and they're really quite boring, slightly unpleasant people. They have this reputation in human medicine, I believe. I've been told. And I think you have to be a person who is happy to sit in a dark room looking through large numbers of images, because that's what the job is. You have to be very detail driven and very precise, and very patient at times. You might need to go through things a number of times before you see the lesion, and you've got to have that real investigative, get to the bottom of things type mind. So I think these are all qualities. You obviously are going to be, one thing, it could be a pro or a con depending on how you look at it, but you're not dealing with pet owners anymore. So I think that's very different to some of the other specialties. So if you're a specialist ophthalmologist or a specialist surgeon, you're still going to have a consultation with an owner at that stage of things. As a radiologist, you don't see an owner anymore. Now, that could be an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on how you look at it. But you don't. All your interactions are with other veterinarians. And I love that. I really love that. I just actually love vets. I think vets are incredibly kind, passionate people who are just trying to do a good job for the most part. So I really enjoy those types of interactions. But that's something that's different. I think there's something that's happened in recent years which worries me, and we probably should address. Radiologists have become very well paid, and that's because they can work in a global market and doing teleradiology across the entire globe, and it's become a very well-paid specialism. So that's okay, but I think what worries me is that people now start to think, I might go into that because I'm driven by the money side of things. And that really worries me, because I think as vets, it's important to be compensated properly, but I think we do our job because we care about the patients, and that should never become, I'm going to do a job because I know I can make a ton of cash. That's not really the right driver, I think. So we as a company try to encourage people to do this job because they care about the patient and they're trying to make a difference to the patient, and also a difference to the GP vet who's asked us about those images. And I think that's very important, that is the driver, helping a patient. And to go back to the example of people who contact me in vet school and say, hey, I'm a student, I want to be a teleradiologist. Sometimes that's followed by, because I know they make really good money. And I always say that shouldn't be a driver. You should want to be a radiologist because you want to help and make a difference, and because you find it absolutely intriguing and fascinating that we can look inside the body without actually cutting the skin. And that's a wonderful thing about radiology, the way we can do CT reconstructions, the way that ultrasound works, and you can make a diagnosis of something in a wonderfully non-invasive way and really make a difference to that patient. That to me is the driver. I think it's very important.
It's almost like an accountability, right? Not just accountability to the coin, it's an accountability, a social accountability to the owner and the pet. And if you don't see that, then there's no passion. There's like, I can see what you're saying, because sometimes you don't want to get up and go to go do your job, or go do, your practice and be a GP or emergency vet or whatever. But then if you have this level of like, I'm going there because my clients need me, and they need me in my A game, because these pets will suffer if I'm not in my A game, then you if you don't have that, then you potentially just turn up like a robot. So I can see, and I love the idea of what you're saying there, which is like almost like a filter. It's like, I'm not going to hire you if you're here for the coin. It really has to be a bigger purpose.
No, that's absolutely, it has to be a bigger purpose. And to me, that makes for much happier veterinarians. So I think if you go to bed every night and you think, you know what, I really tried my best today. I tried my best for the patients. I tried my best for the owners and my colleagues. Then that's even if you didn't quite get it all right, you really tried, and that I think makes them for a much more professionally satisfying career. Whereas, I think that if the driver changes from that, then we're not really being true to the reason we went into this profession in the first place. I grew up wanting to be a vet. From the age of about 12 or 13, I was like sweeping the floors in my local vet practice, trying to see what the vet was doing and learn. And that you want to hold on to that. Actually, it's really important to hold on to that passion for the career and for the pets, really. But yeah, radiology is a bit of an odd one. I mean, you can, as a teleradiologist, not see an animal, and that's quite bizarre. As a veterinarian, we as a company really encourage all of our radiologists and specialists that work with us to do a clinical job as well. I don't want them to be sitting in front of computers all the time. So we encourage people to do split roles. You do some radiology, maybe interpreting images on a screen, but also you go and do some ultrasound in a practice, and you meet some pets. That's important, actually, and I think keeps it real.
So how did you get to that point? How did you get to that feeling that is what was needed for your team to have them more balanced and more rounded and stuff? Was it because you went through and you hired radiologists who were just pure computer screen, sitting there, and that was what they did? Did their level of performance and diagnostic skills start to drop away, or did they start to disconnect? What was it, the thing that made you kind of think that's kind of the balance? Because I'm sure it would have been like, hey, it's so much easier if our guys just focus on this one thing rather than have split kind of responsibilities. So I don't know, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, there's lots of different models for doing teleradiology. The model that was in place when I started this company was a model that didn't really appeal to me, and I wanted to do things differently. The model that was in place was basically radiologists reporting as many cases as possible per hour, as many hours of the week as possible, in order to make good commercial businesses. And I didn't fit with that. It's not really me. It wasn't the way I wanted to do things. So I wanted to do things differently. And so I tried to set this up in such a way that we are genuinely listening to the needs of the vets out there who are relying on a radiologist to interpret their images. And in order to do a good job of that, you have to stay relevant. Relevant, I think, a very important word in this. There's a danger with radiologists sitting behind a screen, never seeing an animal, that they become irrelevant quite quickly because you don't get as much feedback in that scenario. You see some radiographs, x-rays, you write a report, you send it out. Well, unless you have a good vet on the other end who's got the time, which is rare, to tell you, hey, this is what happened and you were right or you were wrong, which we love to know that, by the way. If you sit in that environment for a long time, you can get quite disconnected, really, and actually just start to believe that you're right every time, which is a dangerous thing. So my idea of keeping people in practice as well is that they stay relevant. They see what's needed in a clinical situation. They see the pets. They stay up to date. A lot of people who are radiologists work in a specialist practice, and therefore they're talking to other specialists. They understand what a surgeon needs, what an ophthalmologist needs, and what a neurologist needs. And that keeps them, I think, more cutting edge, more relevant, and I think happier as well. And the happier bit comes from, I actually did a lot of teleradiology the first few years when I set this up, which was almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because when you start a business, you're kind of in the thick of it. And that's not very fun, to be behind a computer screen that many hours. It's not very healthy or fun. So I really recognised early that actually to have the balance and to see family and friends and do some sports and do some clinical work and some teleradiology work, that was a much better mix for everybody.
That's excellent. I've been going through the VetCt website, and I was fascinated to see all the different aspects as well. Because in my mind, there's exactly that model that you talk about. Teleradiology means, you send us your pictures and we tell you what we see, and that's the end of that. But you guys do quite a lot of other things in the company as well. There's something about 3D modeling. Oh, you tell me about it. What are you excited about for your company, for the stuff that you're working on, and what can veterinarians expect to see from the imaging world in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think I'm a victim sometimes of my own excitement and enthusiasm about multiple different projects. So we do tons of other stuff, and we actually increasingly think about ourselves as a telemedicine company rather than just teleradiology. So some of the other things we do, alongside CT scanning, 3D printing became a thing. You could print out bones and create models, which is kind of cool, which enables to plan. You can plan surgical techniques. You can even practice your surgical technique in advance. So that's pretty cool. So we got into that, and we still do that. From day one, I've been a massive believer in education. I strongly believe that vets are people with very active, intelligent minds who like to keep growing and learning all the time. So from the beginning, we've tried to make everything we do educational. So we run educational courses. We actually now do online student courses as well in radiology, which are really fun and interactive with quizzes and bits and pieces like this. And we teach radiology residents. We teach general practitioners about imaging. And then our latest and biggest venture is that we started a telemedicine hospital. And the idea behind that is that any vet can call and speak or have an interaction with any specialist about those cases where you just, as a GP vet, need a little bit more help. This is targeted at trying to help patients that can't be referred. So we really do appreciate that referral hospitals are amazing and do a wonderful job, and I have huge respect for those environments. And if I had a sick dog who had something complicated, I would be straight off to my local referral hospital. But there is a pool of patients who could benefit from specialist input who never actually make it to that physical referral. And that might be because the owner doesn't have enough money to go for a referral, or they can't travel, or potentially there isn't that type of specialty available at their local hospital. So we're trying to fill in the gap. So essentially, if you're a GP and you're dealing with a tricky ophthalmology case, you can get advice from an ophthalmologist. You can get advice from a neurologist for a tricky neurology case. And the way we do that, again, is in a tele way. So for ophthalmology, we have an imaging guide as to how you would take photographs of the eye and what we need to see. For neurology, we allow people to submit videos of what the patient is doing, videos of the neuro exam. And then we can do guided consultations with a specialist with the aim of helping the patient, but also helping the vet, making their life a bit easier and increasing their professional satisfaction, because we want them to avoid interaction and learn from it.
So okay, we jumped way ahead. And like, okay, so how did you go from specialist radiologist to VetCt? Like, what was that point? In mind, you're just like, like I want to try something different, or, so what was it?
Yeah, no, good question. So I had been, so I did my radiology residency, and then afterwards I went to America, to the University of Pennsylvania, and I was there for a couple of years. And then I went to Australia, WA. I went to Murdoch University, had an absolutely fantastic time, loved it, almost didn't come home. And then I came home for a bit to the UK and worked at the Animal Health Trust, quite a big centre of neurology in the UK. And then I went to Florida University and worked there for a while. So
this was all when you're already a specialist, you boarded certified. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
It's kind of a good passport being, well, I think it's a good passport being a vet, because that's a very, a career you can travel with. Well, it was pre-coronavirus. But it's also a good passport being a specialist, because there's always lots of interesting roles for specialists, and I liked teaching, so university jobs were really interesting to me. And I think everywhere you go, you learn different things and you pick up different things. But as a result of all that, I'd met a lot of different people around the world, and then they started to contact me and say, hey, would you mind just having a look at this CT for me, and would you mind telling me what you think of these radiographs? And that kind of grew and grew. And eventually I was like, this is quite a lot of work. I better organise this better. So then I kind of just organised it better. And then I thought, I need a bit of help with this now, and got more people involved. And it kind of grew organically like that. It's weird. I almost didn't really intend to do it. And then as it grew, I started to think about how, if I was going to do this, how I wanted to do it. And that's where this thinking about a model of having specialists that are relevant and are useful. And I think not on a pedestal. Specialists shouldn't be on a pedestal. We're just another part of veterinary medicine, and we should be really helpful and respectful to all our colleagues and useful, I think.
I love how the market, right, the veterinary profession almost kind of created this, and organically it was created, as opposed to, hey, you know what could I do next? How can I earn money? This is my next money-making venture, Yeah. Like, people came to you organically because of who you are, what you did, the value you brought, and you had to create something around that. That's super cool.
It's a weird way to start a business. No, that's nice of you to say. It's I feel very fortunate by having the chance to travel and meet lots of lovely people who then had interesting images that they wanted opinions of.
I got a quick question. How the hell do you interpret ultrasounds? Because I get sent ultrasound images, and we do, I do ultrasounds via, I'm like, no, stop it. Don't send me these crappy clips. Okay. Put me in front of the ultrasound. So I'll watch the ultrasounds in our hospital on FaceTime, right? You'd be like, okay, so you're in the right cranial quadrant. No. So spatially, I got an idea where they are, and I can, no, you've gone too far, stop, adjust the setting, so I can tell them, talking through it. And that definitely helps, apart from being sent like a 15-second clip of something that's shady and kind of, you're not too sure where, is that even a thing? How do you even do that?
This is a huge dilemma. When I fell into this, I wanted to do this in a really high quality way. I kind of wanted people to have huge trust in the reports that we were creating. And with ultrasound, that's really difficult. So essentially, if you're reading an X-ray or you're reading a CT, what I'm seeing is exactly the same as the vet who took that image, as long as you in a right file type. We get Delcom images and we don't compress them. So we make sure that what we're seeing is perfect. It's exactly what the person saw at the other end. With an ultrasound, that's super hard. And as somebody like, obviously you guys do a lot of ultrasound and you know, it's all about how you position your hand and what view you got and what you're looking at and whether you feel like you've interrogated the whole of the abdomen or the whole of the neck. I mean, the musculoskeletal is even more complicated. So I always felt from the beginning, in all honesty, I couldn't do a good job of interpreting other people's ultrasounds. And that I could certainly make a business out of that and charge for it. But I feel a bit guilty putting my name on a report where I knew, well, maybe they missed, I don't know, a big lump in the middle of the abdomen that I wish they'd seen. So we have never done, as a company, ultrasound interpretation. We've stayed away from it. I mean, I think, we've turned down an awful lot of work over the years as a result of that. And we've had clients who've said, you know what, I'd use your company, but I want you to read my ultrasounds. And I've said, no, we don't do it. And I've tried to explain why. And then they've gone to another company that will read the ultrasounds. So I've tried to be very, I guess, on my moral high horse about this to some extent. And if I feel we can't do a good job, I'm not going to do it and we're not going to charge for it, basically. So I think it might change. In the human world, ultrasonography is done by highly trained sonographers who take very standardized images, and there's an awful lot of thought that's gone into developing algorithms and protocols about image acquisition and ultrasound. I think that is coming in veterinary medicine, and already you've got the American College of Veterinary Radiology looking at that, and the European College as well, probably the fellowship as well, so the College of Specialists. So I think it might come, and with that comes standardized training program, standardized image acquisition, and then that makes reporting a lot easier. But we haven't been there to date, so that's why we've never done it.
No, I appreciate you explaining that, because like half the time I was thinking, like, do they do ultrasound as well? Because I would love to know how to do that, because that just blows my mind, you know. Yeah. But
I think doing it, as you said earlier, is like a live where you sit and watch somebody do it, and you can see their hand and you can see where they're going. And some companies have tried to do that over the years, but it's tremendously time consuming and labor intensive to do a good job. It's a difficult thing to teach remotely. I mean, we have looked at ways of teaching it, because I'd like to teach it. I think it's so useful, ultrasound, and there's so many people that want to learn it. Yeah. And I think it's hard to teach in vet school, and it's hard to teach to GP vets too. So I'm trying to actually keep an open mind about and investigating some things at the moment about ways that we could teach it better, have good protocols, and then potentially interpret. But it's a work in progress.
Virtual reality, 5G, something along those lines.
Oh, dude. You'd be nauseous in like 3 seconds. Like getting someone who's new to ultrasound on the ultrasound probe, you're like, you're moving too fast. You're going past it. Stop it. Go.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a complete left turn here. So somewhere on that journey between America and Western Australia and Florida and all over, you met your husband, I presume, that would have been there somewhere.
Yes,
that's correct. Who's also a veterinary radiologist? Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So my husband's French, and we met at the Animal Health Trust in Newmarket in the UK, and we were working together. And actually, we did after I finished at the Animal Health Trust and had been in Florida for a while, we lived in Paris for a year and a half as well. So that was another piece of the journey, and I had to learn to speak French, which was quite challenging because I'm definitely more a scientist brain than I am a linguist. But yeah, so my husband Julien, he's a veterinary radiologist as well, and we run the company together. And that's been great, and I can certainly expand more on that, because there's definitely pros and cons of working together as a husband-wife team.
Yeah.
But we've really made it work, and it's one of the things I'm really proud of, actually.
Well, that's exactly my question, because it's not not an uncommon thing. I'm married to a vet. Gerardo's partner is a vet as well, and they're also in business together. I don't work with my wife. It's not an uncommon thing, and then often will lead to practice ownership together or something like that. How did you make it work? Because I have definitely heard that it is a challenge for many people, and potentially a relationship busting challenge.
Yeah, I think it's something you have to really work hard at, and have a lot of mutual respect, I think, is very, very important, and team spirit. And I think you become partners in work in the same way that you're partners in the rest of your life. You become a real team. I mean, we basically, one's got the kids, one's got work, and that switches over like that all the time. And you get really good at that, but it takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of sticking at it. I think I think we're very complementary. I think that really helps. We have aspects of our personalities that are quite similar and aspects that are different. So we're really good at bouncing ideas off each other, and we'll often have a different opinion on things. And if you can listen to the other person and respect those opinions, you can often find something in the middle that is actually really much better than one of you going one way or one of you going the other way. It's that kind of 1 + 1 makes 3 idea. And if you can make that work, it's really cool. But you do have to stick at it, and you do have to spend a lot of time together, to be honest. It's quite interesting because with the recent coronavirus lockdown, I feel like me and my husband were more prepared for this than many other people. We spend all day together anyway, and we work from home sometimes too. So I think if you get it right, it can be a tremendously wonderful, powerful thing, and it can actually strengthen your relationship outside your home relationship as well as your work relationship. So, but it takes a lot of work, and a lot of people say to us, "I don't know how you do that." I think a lot of people go, "I could never work with my partner," but I'll give you an example. We never ever have an argument about somebody having to work a bit longer or a bit later, ever, because you know that person, you know what they're doing is the first thing. You know that they're working for your team project, for your family, and your project that you two are doing together. And I think there's things like that where you have a greater understanding of each other, and actually you're pulling towards the same goal in a very clear way.
So is there not a risk there then, that because it is such a clear goal, and you don't have somebody who's not in the same boat almost, to sometimes say to you, "Hey, come home, get away from work. We want to see you. The kids want to see you." Is that a risk sometimes?
Yeah. We're both total workaholics and incredibly passionate about our jobs. But luckily, we're incredibly passionate about our children and our families as well. And so that, I think, all works out nicely, because it's not like one thing takes precedent over the other. Work would never take precedent over family. We're really clear on that. But sometimes we do work really long hours, but then we try to pick up the slack for the other person when that has to happen. But yeah, you've got to look at the whole picture. You can't just think about work. You have to think about being good parents at the same time, and get that balance right. It's really important. And good children to parents, and siblings to your brothers and sisters, and good friends to your friends. I mean, there's a lot to throw into that mix.
Did you find you had to have, like, I totally agree with the two minds are better than one. And I love the grey. Alex sometimes gets frustrated with the grey, and I get frustrated with grey too. But when you get to the grey, which is the 1 + 1 = grey, to me, it's like, okay, we came to somewhere in between the middle. Yay! Like, so we celebrate the grey. But did you have to find a specific area? Like, are you more operations, and as he is more business development, or is there a key focus there for each of you guys? Or
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's things that it's got easier and easier over time. In the early days, so I kind of started it, and then Julian came in really quite early on to doing it together. And in the early days, it was kind of both of us doing everything, if that makes sense, and especially both being radiologists. But as it grew, we've added to our team, and that's helped a lot, because we now have different teams doing different things. And so our two jobs have separated to running different teams, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I am, I like people. So I do a lot of the kind of people side of things and the HR side of things. And and Julien does a lot of that. He's very clever in terms of technical stuff, technology. So he does a lot of the IT side of things. He's also pretty good at events and things like that, because we obviously do quite a lot of events and marketing and bits and pieces like that. So we've fallen into different areas, which has been great. But we collaborate well on them. And there's obviously, that's another benefit of working with your partner. There's tremendous trust between you. I think to a husband running a business, there's just a lot of trust that you take for granted in that. So we understand what the other one's doing and we collaborate on that, but we do have our separate roles now. Obviously, we're both still vets and we're both still radiologists, and that will always be the focus. But yeah, in terms of running the business, we've separated that out. Something else that helped us, and it wasn't particularly environmentally friendly in the first place, was we used to drive to work in separate cars. So our office is about a 15-minute drive from our house. And initially, in the early days, we used to go to the office in the same car. And that was just all a bit much. Like, you got up together, you had breakfast together, you went to work in the same car, you sat in the office all day together, you came home together. It was too much. So we bought like a second car. I don't know if you have them in Australia, the little smart cars. Have you seen those tiny? Yeah, like a little bubble car. So that automatically meant that you would leave home in the morning and say goodbye, arrive at the office as slightly 15 minutes later, and just have that degree of separation. That made a huge difference. We now have electric cars, so I feel better about that. But it's
that's such a nice practical little tip, because you're right. There's something when we talk a lot about resetting and reframing and getting yourself from work mode into family mode, and a lot of that happens in the car, and it's much harder for that to happen when you're driving with somebody else, especially if the someone else is also the person you just worked with. So it's very easy for those work conversations to spill into the car. It actually draws a line between work and home. I like that a lot. That's excellent.
It made a big difference. And actually just listening to the radio, because he likes French radio and I listen to English radio, and just 15 minutes doing your thing in the car, it's a good thing.
That was really interesting you say that, because Alex and I drive to the gym in separate cars, and it's like a 20-minute drive. And like sometimes I think about, like, that's a waste of petrol, but I listen to the music that pumps me up. She listens to whatever heavy R&B that she loves. And then what happens is, like, on the way home, we might rendezvous for dinner, or we'll pick something up separately. But it's those kind of little moments where, and when we started COVID, we didn't leave the house. So we used to have both upstairs. We used to have our offices upstairs and like 5 meters away from each other. And then one day she just chucked the shit and she pushed me downstairs. So, because we would have meetings, we in the same meetings but on different computers. But then what happened is we couldn't have meetings because the other person would hear the other meeting. So practically, so I got demoted downstairs, and now we have our own workspaces. And the agreement was 8 to 9 we go for a walk. 9 o'clock is work. And between 9 and 3, you do what you need to do. I do what I need to do. And then 4 to 5 is exercise. And then we have a chat over dinner. And then, so we kind of structured our own times.
Very sensible. I think every couple has to, well, every couple, particularly during COVID, had to find their own way through that. But I think particularly when you work together, you've got to have that structure. I couldn't agree more with you. And I think you've got to have your own space, actually. You really have. And your own ownership of things as well. Like, this is my area and I'm in charge of this. And that's really important, actually, that you each have that. Yeah.
So you mentioned you're workaholics, you're both co-business owners, but then you're very committed parents as well. Now, that's something, when I get feedback about the podcast, a lot of our audience are moms, and they say to me, show us females who are moms who are also effective business leaders, and how the hell do they do it? So how do you do it? How do you practically make specifically business ownership work with parenting as well?
I think, well, firstly, family comes first, and you have to kind of make that clear in your own head, because it's quite easy for my business to feel like a third child sometimes, and I do sometimes refer to it like that, but you have to be clear that it is not quite on the same standing as the other two, who are real little people. And so I think if you get that clear in your head, that helps. And then it's about rigorous time management, I would say, and trying to be in the right zone at the right time. And for me, I find that helps a lot to have separate space and kind of just separate. I separate everything quite in quite a military style. So I have one email address for home stuff, but one email address for work stuff. So on my home email address, I deal with the school and I deal with the nursery and all the things like that. When I'm with the kids, I try to be absolutely 100% mentally with the kids. I try not to be thinking about work and actually in a separate space, because they can feel that. These little people are very clever. They know when you're not mentally with them. And I try to have really, really quality time with the children and to really listen to them, I think, rather than just sort of paying lip service to it, if that makes sense. So that I know I'm not there all the time. I can't be there all the time and run a business. It's impossible. But I try to make sure that the times I'm with them, I'm truly with them and they're getting sort of full value from me. And that I just try to pay attention to being a really good parent. It's not always easy, and parenting is never perfect. I don't think running a business is ever perfect either. But I think if you try to separate them, have your priorities clear, and just be organized and show lots of love and kindness in both environments, but particularly the home environment, that goes a long way. I think good childcare as well. I mean, I couldn't do my job without really great childcare, and finding people that you trust to do a good job of being there with your kids when you can't be there all the time. That's really important. But it is hard, and there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of guilt that you're neither doing one thing or the other well enough. And I think in that respect, you have to be kind to yourself and actually think, I'm doing my best of both of these things. I think the other thing that's quite important to say is I think I'm probably a better mum for having a job that I enjoy and I'm passionate about. I've definitely not ever been somebody that I think I couldn't be a full-time mum. I think there's some amazing full-time mums out there who do a brilliant job of that. But it's not me, and I like to have this other side of me as well. And I think it makes me better at being a good mum when I'm with the kids.
That's excellent. I think the guilt thing there, that's what I get a lot of when I speak to my wife's a vet as well. But it is that, well, am I doing either of them well enough? That is a big thing. So I like that. Be kind to yourself. You're doing your best, and I love that you have to do the stuff that you love. It's really useful.
Well, I kind of think as well. So I have my children's 2 girls, and I kind of think it's important for them also to see good role models, essentially. And I think I've always really loved having a career. I feel very passionate about it and very lucky to have a career that I really enjoy. And I think that's kind of a good thing for my girls to see that, and not something to be ashamed of or try to hide from them. I want them to be happy in life, whatever they choose to do. I really don't mind what they choose to do, but I want them to know that all doors are open to them, and that I will encourage whatever they want to do and whatever aspirations they have or achievements they want to achieve.
Victoria, you said before that you got team members around the world. How do you manage remote teams? How do you manage teams, in different time zones, all that kind of stuff?
So we were probably one of Zoom's become a great big thing during coronavirus, but we've been using Zoom and things like that for years and years prior to this. We do an absolute ton of video calling. I think it's never as good as the actual being physically in the same room as people, but I think seeing each other face to face is massively important. So in terms of managing remote teams, I think FaceTime's important. I think talking is important. Getting to know each other is important. We also try to have actual events where we actually physically get the team together and get them to know each other. And then we do things like, I don't know, we go and make pizzas together. A couple of years ago, we were all in Switzerland for a conference. We went to make chocolate together. So I think that was really good. So when you have the opportunity to physically get together, we really try and optimize that. But we do a ton of online meetings and a ton of chatting. We also do a lot of, I think, just fun things together online, not just all work related. So during the coronavirus period, we've been running a kids club where we did some fun stuff. We got everybody to bring their kids onto the camera and we did some fun stuff for them. I did a radiology quiz. Somebody else did guess the animal poo. I thought was inspired. So they showed all these different poo, and they had to guess which animal it was.
Oh, that's the best.
Wonderful. They loved
So what, radiology images, and then the kids had to guess, or guess,
no,
guess the animal from what?
the one I did was guess the species, guess which patient this is from an X-ray.
Yeah.
I also we did one with chocolate bars as well. We had X-rays of chocolate bars, and they had to guess which the chocolate bar was. They loved that. And then one of my colleagues, she did like animal facts, and one of them was guess the animal poo, just from pictures of poo. So yeah, but things like that. And then we've done, we did less kid orientated this, but we did a wine tasting for our team online. We did a whiskey tasting. We did because one of my colleagues lives in Scotland and he's big into single malt, so he did a proper like formal. That was an evening session, funnily enough. But that's complicated because we have people that work in Australia and US and UK, so it's not evening for everybody. But we also somebody did an online surf lesson. Somebody did, which is hard to do. We did yoga and lots of things like that. So I think those types of engagement, you can be quite creative. We did a pub quiz. So I think trying to be engaging with your team. But I think one of the most important things is actually just showing people that you care, that actually you're a real person and they're not just stuck at the end of a internet connection miles and miles away from you. That's very important.
That translates nicely to when people talk about increased telemedicine for GP vets and everything like that. That same thing is showing if you're dealing with clients online, showing them that you care somehow. If you're just doing it online, so you haven't had the opportunity for the one-to-one in-person contact, you might not have an answer for this, but have you got any tips to create that instant connection, or how?
I think that's really, really important. I think it's much harder. I think we talked about this earlier, but actually trying to create connections with people online that you haven't actually met before in person is tricky. I think having cameras on is massively important. So we're doing increasing amounts of telemedicine in terms of specialist advice for veterinary surgeons. We don't do the vet to pet owner type of telemedicine. But for those types of consultations, we're definitely doing a lot more video calling and trying to build relationships that way. I think a lot of trying to add value to your clients is trying to put yourself in their shoes, understand what problems they're facing, what their day is like, and how you can best help that and be useful. And some of that is just very simple. Vets are truly busy, and we have to be careful about that and not take up their time or waste their time. I think trying to be useful to people and give them a very high quality service and reliable, trustworthy service is a great way to relationship build. And we try to do a lot of added value things as well. So things like teaching, training, CPD, always trying to recognize that our clients as veterinary surgeons are highly skilled, intelligent people who are interested in learning and growing in their own right. They don't want to be patronized. That's very important. They want to be helped and supported and respected. So I think trying to get those relationships right and really be a trusted partner, a trusted extension of their practice that adds value to what they're trying to achieve in their daily job. It is the best I can say. Before COVID, we tried to get our clients together at events as well. So at conferences like vet shows and international conferences and country-based conferences, we try to get together and have some beers together with your clients, because I think that counts. That's important. And just get to know them. And we also ask for a lot of feedback. I think that's really important. I literally today I've sent out a load of surveys to our clients about how do you think we're doing? You know, we're trying to get this right, but maybe we didn't get this right. So that listening, I think, having an open ear to listening to what people want is important.
Well, I'll give you some feedback straight away. We've signed up our hospital for VetCt's, the telemedicine support, and we've used it a few times. The feedback is really good. And this is emergency stuff. So in the middle of the night, I've got vets phoning the UK and getting advice, and really useful advice. So good feedback.
No, that's great. I mean, that's really what we're trying to achieve. Is I think that the 24-hour nature of what we do is pretty cool and can be super useful. I mean, when I was doing emergency practice, if I had been able to I don't know, say I got a tricky eye case or a neuro case in the middle of the night or something, a fitting dog I couldn't deal with or an eye hanging out, it's quite nice to know that you could call a specialist to ask about that in the middle of the night. And that's the real comfort, I think, and can help better patient management as well.
Absolutely.
So that's the aim. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you like it.
Right, Victoria. So it's a podcast. We hopefully have podcast listeners. Are you a podcast listener?
I do, yeah. I love podcasts, actually.
So have you got any favorites that I should add to my playlist?
Well, they're usually UK-based satire programs, so I don't have much interest to you guys. There's I like comedy, I have to say. I mainly listen to comedy and satire. I do now increasingly try to listen to veterinary ones as well, but sometimes it's just nice to switch off.
And true.
Some comedy stuff. Yeah,
I love British comedy. Have you got any favorites?
Well, there's one I listened to called the Friday Night Comedy Podcast from a radio station called Radio 4, and they do one that it's not on all the time, but they do one called Dead Ringers, which is an impression show, and they do the most amazing impressions of British political and famous figures, but also global leaders as well. I won't name names, but it's very funny and it's very well done.
I can imagine who.
Okay, get that sort of. So as soon as we log off here, I'm listening to that. I'm going to give that a try. And then a very last one that we like to wrap up with. You are speaking through a teleconference to all of the new graduate vets of the year, which is actually happening. I see they've got all these online veterinary graduation parties, and you have a few minutes to give all of them one message. What's your one message to the new grad vets of the world?
It's a really, really good question that you just flung me there. I think be kind to yourself and be kind to one another, because I truly think that vets are kind and caring people, and that's why we go into this profession. And if we stay really true to that and keep that at the centre of everything we do, particularly being kind to yourself, because it's a hard job sometimes, and we all try our best, and it can be quite stressful and quite tough. So be kind to yourself, appreciate that you're always just trying your best, and be kind to your colleagues because they might have had a really tough day. But I think it's a wonderful profession. We are so incredibly lucky to be veterinarians, and I think every vet I've ever met is pretty much a really nice person, and you don't get that in every career path.
I love it. It's simple and love it.
I totally agree what you say about vets being lovely people. That's my greatest joy with the podcast, is every single person who does it, regardless what part of the profession and what part of the world, at the end of it, I always go, what a nice person. That was so nice. I really like that.
We're very lucky. My sister's a lawyer, and it's very different in her profession. God, you deal with all these nice people. It's we're very lucky. I mean, I think we sometimes take that a bit for granted, that we're surrounded by really nice folk.
Yeah, absolutely. Victoria, thank you so much for your time. I love that. I can chat to you for hours. But, I think we'll call it a wrap there. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to meet you guys. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for listening. Remember to go and check out the show notes at thevetvault.com for a summary of some of the best bits from the episodes and our guests' favorite resources. If you found value in this and you can think of a friend or a colleague who could benefit from the content, then please do them a favor and share this episode with them.